Welcome back to this week's episode of Be Bolder. We got a full house here today. I am joined by the HBIC, Danielle Blount, who sort of runs the show here, who you've heard from a couple times. We're also joined by Lizzie Rossi, and I'm going to let her talk to you a little bit about her background. And then also Monica Linseman. I hope I pronounced your last name right. But we're joined by her also, and she's going to talk to you about her interesting and exciting background as well. I would say all of the ladies on this podcast this week are taking some leaps and betting on themselves. And so that is an awesome thing. It's a scary thing. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, the transition, the change, the fear, maybe even the grief that comes with that a little bit, and march forward. So, my background, Danielle. So first we're going to kick it over to Lizzie to tell us all a little bit about her background.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lizzie. I know Danielle from high school and Monica from high school. So we've all been friends for about 15 years.
Don't age us, Liz.
Sorry. Sorry.
I don't even want to hear it.
I am an occupational therapist. I graduated from the University of Buffalo in 2015. So I've been practicing as an occupational therapist in pediatrics. So I work in a special education program. So that is my day job, my full-time job. And I recently decided to hop on the business owner train. So I, on the side, do artwork. I do black and white ink drawings. I make signs for weddings, special events. I paint wall murals. I've painted Monica's children's room with jungle animals. So
little monkeys and giraffes.
So I've always been artistically inclined, I guess you would put it. I was always the friend in high school that my friends would secretly make me do their work in art class.
Maybe that's why Liz would be like 5 years behind everybody. Remember how long she used to take Ellie? Liz was just still there, and like Miss Bacco would just keep on pushing everything through, and
she was doing 10 people's projects.
Still just whittling away.
And everyone thought she just had a great attention to detail, which turns out she does.
She definitely did. Definitely did.
So that is my business. It's called EHR Designs. I just got up and running a few weeks ago. I made my own social media account. So I am still very much learning the ins and outs of owning a business and all of that fun stuff.
Awesome. Well, welcome to entrepreneurial life. It's very exciting. Way to take the leap. Okay, Monica, tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you, Lindsay. So I'm Monica. I graduated with my master's in social work in 2016. And I've been working with a local psychiatric hospital in Buffalo for the last 7 years. And then I transitioned over into a therapist role in 2018. And in April 2018. And it was really just such a welcoming environment for new counselors, and just like a lot of different modalities that were like very new. And another big thing that they were very much pro was private practice, which I guess I never really thought about prior to got it in my ear, and really learned from all of the counselors there and other therapists, was that like, okay, this was my next step, but I never really kind of like had an idea of when that was going to be. So I continued working there until like I really started to feel more comfortable in my shoes. And that's like really what I am most thankful for, is like the network that I built in knowing everybody, and just kind of learning from them and really feeling confident to be able to start to take that leap, because when you take that leap, you start to not feel as confident. So I'm at least grateful of, the background that I came from, who I learned from, And that, a lot of the previous therapists that I did work with there have gone into private practice. So I knew a lot of people of like how to reconnect and who to ask. But yes, I also just started my business in June. I got everything started, and I actually had my first day in private practice today.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Hey.
it was pretty awesome. I had a lot of nerves all day long, even though I do the same thing every day for the last 5 years. But it was just, I think, very liberating doing it on your own. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's just a little bit about me.
Okay.
Congrats on the first day. First one under
Thank
the
you.
belt.
Yes. Yeah, it's good.
That's good, because sometimes people have stories with their first day and it did not go well. So I'm glad to
I
hear
mean, there
that.
were a lot of things that did not go well, but it was more of my personal life. So at least it didn't run into conflict.
Yeah, totally fair. Totally fair. So, I'm going to ask the same question to each of you, but, I would say, did each of you have a moment that was like a tipping point for you where you said, hey, I think I would rather do this thing over here than my normal full-time everyday job? So Monica, I'll let you answer that one first, and then we'll come back to you, Lizzie, for you to answer.
Yeah, like I said, like I've always had this idea over the last like 2, 3 years. This has been kind of my goal. But the tipping point was in April. I had a conversation with a former colleague who is now in private practice. And she was just, we worked together at our place together at our clinic. And then she was in private practice. And I was just astounded at like just how much better all around her life was,
Mm.
both just like as a mother, as a wife, as a friend, um in her own like practice she was better, and she just always presents so calmly. But even still, like I just kind of like looked at her, and financially too, like it was just like all around just a better idea. And it was just like, okay, I have to do this, and I have to do this now. Like I had just passed my exam. That's what I was waiting for. And then she just kind of showed me like all of the research and numbers and everything. And I was like, that this is what I need to do. And I need to stop sitting on my ass pretty much. And I need to do this like yesterday.
Awesome. Okay. And Lizzie, how about you? Because I feel like I've seen some of your work over time. I think I even have a couple things.
Yeah.
I might actually run out of the room and get one, but I know you've been kind of doing this for a little while. So what was the thing that sort of inspired you to say, wait a minute, I need to make some changes and do something a little different?
Yeah, I have been. For a long time, I've just been doing it like word of mouth. So for family, friends, they would say, I want a special gift for my parents for Christmas, or, I saw this on Pinterest. Could you write this for me or recreate this? And what really got me started a few years ago was Danielle and her sister, Melissa, when they started their business, Lily and Gray. And they said, hey, like, we could use somebody that just knows how to do calligraphy, draw houses, like any of that kind of stuff, and we'll put you in our boxes. So that's really where it started. But again, it was, I would be busy around the holidays doing that kind of stuff, and then it would kind of die down. So it was never like, I never really fully took the plunge, and I never promoted myself a lot. And I think a lot of that was just because I do still have a full-time job that is a lot of work. And I was kind of always afraid to really put in that extra work. I mean, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
It is a lot, but I just feel like I have been surrounded by a few people in my life who have just inspired me to, if I want something in life and I have all of this talent that I'm sitting on, that I really need to pursue that. And so a friend that I've had for a while reached out to me. She's recently started her own business and said, hey, I have this event for female-owned businesses. I think you should come and bring your artwork. And it was very spur of the moment, and I did it. And right then and there, I told Ellie this. I was at the event and people were like, well, what's your Instagram name? And I was like, I don't know. So I very quickly set all of that up, and then it just kind of took off. I mean, it was actually incredible how many people in the last 3 weeks even have reached out to me and said, what you're doing is amazing. Like, I love your work. I'd love to have you do something, for my wedding or for my friend's shower or for my parents for Christmas. And it really is amazing how many people are willing to support you just to help you, grow your business. They want to see you succeed. And like, that has just made a huge difference. I feel like even friends and family that say, oh my gosh, I'm gonna, remind me around Christmas time, I'm gonna order something from you. So it's been a lot of work. It's been very busy, but it's going well so far.
Good.
Lizzie's
So
also way too modest, because last year she would still, when she would do our house sketches for our boxes, I'd say, she's like, anyone, they put enough effort in this. Lindsay and I were actually having a conversation about effort and talent earlier. So it really rounds this out. And she's like, if you try hard enough, anyone could really draw these houses. And I was like, Liz, I could keep trying and I could keep trying and I'm still not going to do it. And Liz finally this weekend, when I was picking some stuff up, and I was like, so do you think that anyone could still do it? And she's like, no, I have a talent. And I was like, thank you for finally admitting it and doing a little bit of bragging, because
that's part of me. I think that's part of the reason too why I was always so hesitant to really put myself out there, is because it doesn't come like naturally to be like talking about myself or promoting myself or posting all my work. And so I never like made, my own page for my artwork, because I just felt like so silly, like, oh, look at what I did, like I felt like I was showing myself off, and that doesn't come naturally to me. So that was a big, doing that has been like a learning experience too, because you really do have to constantly be putting yourself out there and showing the people the process, and, like how it is a talent, and it does take a lot of work, and not everybody can do it. And I've started to accept that, and really.
Yes. Well, I think too, like I hear you say showing yourself off, and it's like that has a stigma, right? And it's like starting to kind of like lift that a little bit and say, like, showing yourself off, hell yeah, show yourself off. Like, you work so hard on everything, and everything is like so well thought out, and it's beautifully done, and you put so much hard work and effort into it. Absolutely. Right. And you just like have to get over that hump of like, oh, this is like really awkward and vulnerable,
Right.
but I'm gonna put myself out here and it's all good.
Vulnerable is the word that I was looking for. Yes.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. And I think that's something that makes taking the leap and the change so scary, because I think a lot of people get really nervous because they are vulnerable, because you are putting yourself out there. You are saying, like, for you, Lizzie, I'm putting my artwork out there for the world to judge or love or whatever they're going to do, right? But there's a risk there. And then, Monica, for you, you're putting yourself out there to grow a new practice on your own, run a business, and that comes with its own stresses. And we all have, whether we want to admit it or not, doubt, because we all have this pressure that says, oh, well, what if I don't succeed? What if I don't do this? What if I don't do that? But at some point you need to flip it on your head and on its head and just say, well, shoot, what if it does succeed? What if it goes better than I ever thought that it could go? And I'm kind of hearing, Lizzie, it's going better than you thought that it could have gone. And yes, you still have a full-time job, but it sounds like at some point you're going to have a decision to make, if I have my guess. And then, Monica, for you, I'm hearing, hey, today was the first day of, really running your own show, and it went better than you would have even expected that it would go.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's just such a wild thing that we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And I think that's the thing that holds a lot of us back. So I'm so glad to hear that, you said, I'm going to do this thing, and it's going to be what it's going to be on whatever day, but I'm going to give it my all and see how it goes. So Monica, for you, what were your biggest worries walking into today?
Oh, they are still continuous.
Oh, right now they're still happening.
Yeah. Like, I have, this is going to be my job. Whereas, when you work under a clinic, you're kind of protected by, like, I'm still going to get a paycheck at the end of the day. Whereas I'm not going to get a paycheck if people don't show up or if I can't pull in the clientele. And, I've just been kind of struggling with how to, and continuing to struggle with how to kind of market myself. I know that therapy is kind of like a difficult topic to just like kind of jump in and talk about. And I try and kind of implement it here and there. But it's also kind of like a word of mouth type thing of like, oh, I know this therapist, like you should talk with her. And I'm still kind of, newer in the private practice. So, it's just kind of, I think the marketing is what I'm struggling with, and the credentialing. So like the backside of everything, the numbers and just kind of like the business aspect of it, that's never been my forte. That's why I became a therapist. And I'm a good talker, but I can't like do all of this like rhetoric around like reading the jargon and understanding everything, and I kind of have to reread things like 15 times to like truly understand like what's going on. But I think that's kind of like where my worry has been. But I found that like, once you get a point person with a lot of these credentialing places and the insurances, you have someone to talk to. So I've just, it's not in my nature to kind of bug people. Like I want to respect their space and I don't want to be on top of it, but that's my discomfort. And I need to get over that if I want to be successful in this. And however I might come across to this other person, I'm still going to try and be as pleasant and polite as I can be. But this is what I have to go for. So if I have to email them once a week, then I have to email them once a week, and that's okay. And I have to tell myself that that's okay. So I think that that's kind of like where my struggle has been.
I'll just say once a week, Monica, is beyond polite. I think Lindsay and I probably worked with people who want money from us at our prior organization that emailed us once an hour. So you're totally fine.
I thought about it, don't you? I thought about calling the number.
But as a therapist, she's respecting boundaries.
She is.
That's what I heard there.
Absolutely. Well, and a lot of people said, I'm working from home. And so like, it's hard to work from home. And like, I would see like emails roll in at 9 o'clock at night. I'm like, wow, they're sending them late, but I don't want to bug them. So, but it has been working better.
It's cutthroat out here in business. You got to contact them when you need something.
Exactly.
And Monica, I think one of the things that you
and put your business side of it on, and if you've got to get it done, just get it done.
Right. Yeah.
Still gets the grease.
Like one of the things you touched on that I thought was important was, I think when a lot of people get into entrepreneurship, they think like, it's hustle, and you're constantly going to be going like 80 hours a week, and you can't do anything else. But, you said one of the reasons you wanted to get into private practice was to find that balance and to have that goal at the end of the day, which I think, is it really important for people to hear, that are listening to this or anyone else, like that advice to have sort of that end goal for you and your family, that you're not getting into this because you want to work. I guess it's hard work up front, but your end goal was that balance for your life for that. So I thought, talk a little bit more about that and your thing.
Yeah, I mean,
on that part.
Practice what I preach, right? Like I always talk to, my clients about short-term discomfort versus long-term gain, but short-term doesn't mean like it's going to be a week. Short-term can be a few years. It can be like a couple months or whatever it might be. And that's kind of like where, I struggle because, I told my husband too, like I haven't been the easiest person to live with the last couple months. I'm extremely irritable. We have 2 young children who are constantly all over the place mood wise, rightfully so. I'm on edge, I'm still working my job. A lot of new things are still happening. Life is still going on. So my husband kind of gets the short end of the stick. So there's definitely been some other struggles too, just personally in starting a business of like, not only are you, for me, I've been nervous about the business, but then it comes out in other facets. Like it comes out in my personal life. I'm very short with people. And then I'm upfront about it too. I'm like, I'm just so short. Like I can't, I'm trying to keep it in a little bit more, but it's just, like I'm in this constant, what feels like a constant state of panic. I get an email from someone, I need to send them something, but I needed it like sent 3 weeks ago type thing. So I think that that's where it's just constant, panic for me in this point in time, but it's starting to get a little bit better.
I think that self-awareness to even know that you're having that feeling and processing it. Most people who are starting a business, Lindsay would probably agree with me, don't have that self-awareness to even know that that's what's going on in their brain. Like, and
Right.
like, that's what's going on. And like, that those are, the
Yeah.
business stuff is affecting the personal stuff, or the personal stuff is affecting the business stuff, like how that all sort of starts then like cascading. So maybe there's something to that because you're a therapist, but
I mean, I'm in tune with it. It doesn't mean that it's always effective.
Now, I'm curious, Lizzie, do you feel like that's happening for you too? Because I would imagine there's stresses that come with, people will have things, everyone comes to you, I'm sure, just like they come to everyone else last minute. Hey, I need this thing. I need it turned around. And yours has an artistic component to it too. So sometimes you just can't rush art, So how do you deal with some of those stresses and pressures?
Yeah, it's right now I'm still very much learning how to not only handle the stress of my full-time job, but also then, I come home and have to do another job. And it can be a lot, if I've had a tough day at work. Like I said, I work in special education with young kids, and it can be, that in itself can be very emotionally exhausting and stressful. And sometimes, to be honest, the last thing I want to do when I get home is then sit at a desk and draw for 4 hours, or, make a wedding sign that is due the next day. So I'm right now really trying to, I was just talking to Ellie about this the other day. Like this is all new to me, and I feel like I need to, really figure out a plan for myself and how to manage all of these things. Not only from like an organizational standpoint, like, setting up even something simple like setting up a spreadsheet where I have like due dates and I give myself enough time and have all of that organized. But I also need to, I think, get better at being not assertive. Is assertive the word I'm looking for? But like when someone does come to me and say like, hey, I saw your work. My shower is next weekend. Could you do this? And of course, right now I'm like welcoming the business. I'm excited. So I'm like, sure. And then I'm up until midnight, 3 nights a week doing it. So I do, moving forward, I do need to, figure out a plan to tell people, hey, if you would like this done, I need 2 weeks, I need 3 weeks, I need X amount of time in order to have it done for you. So that way I'm also putting my mental health, ahead of.
Or if you want that turnaround.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's true.
A little extra,
bro.
I could be adding a rush fee, and it's hard because like I said, right now it is extremely rewarding when I get the paycheck from all, doing all of this work. So I don't want to be turning people away, and I want to, be accommodating and flexible. However, there is, there's a fine line, and I don't want to spread myself too thin.
Yeah. And it's challenging. I remember when, so way back in the day, I was, full-time in-house counsel with a venture firm. And then I was like helping clients onesie, twosie on the side and after hours. And I can remember thinking like, man, like this is a lot to manage and balance. And I can remember being so tired trying to like get work done for some of my clients. And at the time I had this teeny tiny little like 1-bedroom apartment, and I was just, doing this work to try to like pay off my student loans. I remember being so tired one night that I had to sit on the floor with my back against a dresser so that I could stay up with my laptop on my lap to try to like get the work done. And it's so stressful, but I think it, to your point, Monica, I think well said, it's this, short-term pain, if you will, for ultimately long-term gain. And it's, are you willing to put yourself through some of that? And a little bit of that is kind of letting it suck. It's going to suck a little bit. Like there's an awesomeness to it because you're building something, you're developing something, you're growing something. But, nothing worth doing is necessarily easy, right? I mean, if it was super easy, everybody would do it. And I think that people sometimes look past how hard it can be, and we forget ourselves how hard it can be. And, I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, like, why am I stressed? Why am I feeling whatever? Because you're effectively working 2 full-time jobs. Like, that's what's happening right now.
Yeah.
I think a lot of founders, if they're thinking about taking the leap, or they're trying to moonlight until they've grown a business to a place where it's ready to go, or they're just, burning the ships and starting something new, like, there's a real stress that comes with that. It's a lot of stress, and it's a lot of pressure. So, kudos to you guys for recognizing it, but, also kind of pushing through it in what sounds like a healthy way. So cheers to that, because not everybody does it that way. And then
It's
you
all
get
trial and error.
you might get phone calls from someone that are like, hey, I can still hear you typing on your computer. You need to stop doing that because it's 9 o'clock at night. That person might be
talking about you, Ellie.
I'm like, why are you typing?
Like, it's 7 o'clock on a Friday. Why are we still typing in a computer?
It's funny because sometimes, like, after a long day at work, like, I'll come home, I'll like put Netflix on. I want to just have a glass of red wine, and I'm like, okay, like, I can work while I'm having a glass of wine. And I'm like, no, I can't. I have to be like, what if I spill the wine on the drawing? What if I can't be drinking while I'm doing artwork?
Right. Yeah. And it's just one of those things, like, there's a lot of micro sacrifices that come with making these choices and these leaps and these decisions. And I don't think, like, we really think about them. And that's the thing that separates, like, the folks who are going to be really successful from the ones who are going to be, moderately successful. It's, how many of those micro sacrifices are you willing to compound on top of each other to achieve the thing that you want to achieve, which then again comes back to the conversation Danielle and I were having earlier. I'm like, you can do anything. It's just how much do you want to sacrifice to do it? And there's a line. You shouldn't be like sacrificing your health, your life, your well-being. But there's always a little pressure and pain that comes with it too. So I'll ask this question of each of you. So Monica, I'll take you first. Where do you see your business going in the next 3 years?
3 years, it's interesting. There's a lot of different avenues that you can go with it. Like, I do know some counselors who have opened up more of kind of like their own little clinic, just with their own therapists, and they own a building and they rent out space with other therapists, which I think it would be neat to either like think about that or what that would entail. I don't know if that's necessarily my path per se. I would just prefer to kind of be more established in my business by then, have more of a set schedule. Right now, it's going to be a little bit more flexible because the kids are still home a little bit more, but they'll be in school full time in 3-4 years. So at that point, I'm going to be looking to kind of take the next step of like, what does that look like? For business, I'm not entirely sure, but I think I would do more of like trainings and kind of see where that would take me, and maybe just kind of look at being a person to train other people in different modalities. And that's kind of been on my forefront recently. But I don't know if that's, I haven't thought too much past like this point. This has been like the next hump. And I think that that's part of my own insecurities. Like, it was really hard for me to just get to here. And so I kind of always have this vague idea. I don't always set a lot of things in stone because it's scary until it's like pretty close. And then I can set it in stone and it's like, okay, I can do this, this, and this, which is why, once I passed my exam in April, then I was like, oh, this is actually feasible now. But it was always there. I was scared to put it there because what if I fail?
Sure.
Right. So
But
that's
what if
kind
you
of
succeed?
exactly right. What if I succeed? But yeah, so I think that there's some of my own insecurities in what that would look like in 3 years. But I think the biggest thing is like just feeling like a lot more comfortable and established just in private practice. Kind of just, making it more of my own type thing.
And Lizzie, how about you? 3 years.
Well, Lindsay, that is a tough
Manifest it
question.
out. What's it going to be?
I have absolutely no idea. Like I said, I wasn't even expecting to do this at all. It just kind of happened. So I don't know. I mean, with this type of business, I feel like there is a lot of potential to maybe someday I could be doing this full time. Um, people, it's funny because like as soon as I really started doing this, people are coming to me and saying, well, are you going to host calligraphy classes, or are you going to do this event, or are you going to start selling prints in stores, and like there's so many different avenues I could take with like a calligraphy business or artwork or that kind of stuff that I haven't even been able to think about. Like there's just so much that I could potentially do with it. But then again, I also have my other job that I'd have to consider leaving, which would be terrifying because that's what I went to school for and got my degree in and have a lot of student loans for.
Yeah.
So I really don't know. I mean, I think I just have to take it one step at a time. And that's my plan. Like for now, I'm just going to plan on doing both and see where it takes me.
Awesome.
I will say, I think, Lindsay, you and I are, and Lindsay's probably made me more of a fan of the woo-woo spiritual manifesting over the past bit here. But, Monica, I think when you mentioned, yeah, just speaking into existence, Monica, when you mentioned, I think 2.5, maybe almost like 3 years ago, you said, I want to go into private practice. Maybe you weren't sure about it yet, or like when it was going to be feasible because you had to get your hours in, you had to pass that final exam after you had your hours in and go ahead and do all that. I just knew it was a matter of time for you. I knew it was going to happen. So like maybe you just, you had to get there, you said for yourself, you weren't ready to set it in stone, but for me, it was in stone. So like, I knew that. So sometimes it's just sort of like speaking that into existence. Right. So Liz, be careful if you want to speak it into existence. Monica already did it for herself.
Are you having any manifestations for me? What are you thinking of?
I said speak it into existence if you want to do it full time. I've already said that.
And I'll hold space for it. Whatever you guys want to do, I'm here to hold the space for it. So I think it's what I'm hearing here is I think an interesting thing that a lot of entrepreneurs can think about, right? Because I think a lot of folks get in their head, entrepreneurship means, raising a bunch of capital, selling, parts of their business, like go IPOing, like super majority of businesses are solely owned businesses, one or two business partners. And the question for those, businesses are, what are the next reasonable steps as they move from A to B, B to C? And so I do appreciate hearing, kind of going, well, I want to see where it goes. I want to, see, what I can do and what I can turn it into, and know that most entrepreneurs are in that exact same place. So if you're hearing their story, entrepreneurs, this is probably your story too, for a super majority of you, sans the 0.5% of you who take on venture capital dollars. So, I think it's important to hear. I also do think, I'll echo Danielle's sentiment. There is something to speaking, the things that you want into existence. So it sounds like you probably both, and not even realized it, spoken what you're doing right now into existence. And so, I think one of the things to always keep in mind is be careful what we wish for, because we just might get it. So with that, I'll ask each of you any words of advice for fellow new or to be new entrepreneurs marching forward. Lizzie, we'll have you go first, and then Monica, you can round it out.
I guess I'm just going to have to go with something very cliche, but what's the saying? You get in what you, or you get out of something what you put in, you know? If you want to be successful, you have to put in the work and you will be rewarded. If I've learned anything, I feel like it's that. It, you know, like I said, it took me a long time to have the courage to really get this going. And since I have, it's been nothing but amazing. So you just got to take that. You have to be willing to take that first step, no matter how scared you are.
Exactly. And how about you, Monica? Words of wisdom for the budding entrepreneur.
So I completely agree with that too. And the other thing I was thinking of too is I just listened. Are you familiar with Brene Brown at all? She's
Mhm.
a research social worker. She studies vulnerability and shame.
Yeah.
I love her work. I literally watch her TED Talks, her Netflix podcasts, everything. But I was just listening to a podcast on leadership, and she was talking about how they were like having a discussion in a room. There was like 7 of them, and then they were all trying to brainstorm about something, and then one of the people in the room asked a question like, what are we working on? And Brene was like, all right, hold on, I want everybody to write down what you think we're working on. And they all wrote, 5 of the 7 wrote down different answers. And Brene's point was like, ask questions. Like, as silly as it sounds, like, ask questions, because then you are going to trust that person. And it's true. Like, I feel like sometimes I have to do so much on my own, and when I don't ask those questions, that's when I make mistakes. And I've found that, like, throughout, especially like the last like 4 months, like when I didn't ask a question or when I didn't follow up with somebody and just double check something, the paperwork was either sent back to me or something was wrong and I had to wait a longer time. And so I think that there's this kind of balance between like doing it on your own, making sure that you're doing your own work, not riding on your coattails, right? Like you guys did a podcast around that. And then also ask questions, like talk to people, network, see what's worked for other people, because that's your own research too. And that's really how like I have gotten through this was, 2 of my colleagues who are, some of my closest friends, they've done this. And yes, I have done the work in, following through and in going through the process of it, but they have also been there for any question that I've had. And if they haven't, then I've, tried to figure it out on my own type thing. But, asking questions is a vulnerable part, but it has definitely been helpful if like you can balance it out with, also putting in that work and effort.
Awesome. Well, I certainly appreciate everyone's time on this podcast and the, vulnerability and the honesty of, the scariness of taking a leap and betting on yourself and believing in you that you can do it. And I look forward to seeing how each of you progress here, and maybe we'll look back in 3 years and we'll listen to this podcast and you'll go, oh my gosh, all those things that I said back when, I've achieved and then some, because I put it out to the universe. So, so thank you so much, everyone, for hanging out with us here today. And for all of you out there, thanks for listening as always. And don't forget, don't just be bold, be bolder.